Welcome to the Noyack Wealth Weekly Expert Series, powered by Noyack Wealth Club, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to empowering millennials and Gen Z through financial education. Our mission is simple: help you navigate wealth management, align your investments with your values, and prepare for the largest wealth transfer in history. At the core of this mission is Noyack Wealth Weekly, the #1 personal wealth management newsletter, now brought to life through this podcast or expert series. I'm CJ Fellini, extremely sick, founder of Noyack Wealth Club, and today we're diving into a critical yet often overlooked topic: cohabitation agreements, something that is going to become very near and dear to my heart very soon. More couples than ever are choosing to live together instead of marrying, but without the right legal protections, breakups can lead to serious financial consequences. Don't I know it? To help us break it all down, we're joined by Meredith M, a leading expert in asset protection at Bernstein Shur in Maine and Boston. She'll share what these agreements should include, why they matter, and how they can safeguard your financial future. Let's get started and welcome.
Yes,
Meredith.
thank you. I'm glad to be invited back.
Yeah, the first one was a barn burner and everyone loved it. So here you are.
Thank you. This is going to be a very hot topic.
It is. Let's dive into it. I keep hearing about cohabitation agreements. Do normal couples even need them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is they are absolutely for normal people. I think there's a quote that said, give someone $200,000 and they're going to fight over it. It's a small investment to make, reducing an already difficult time. If you are sharing property that you've both invested in, or you have a joint bank account, I will say the only thing more expensive than a cohabitation agreement is protracted litigation to split up, to decide who gets the house, who gets the bank account. The hope with something like this, maybe a prenup, a postnup, or a cohabitation agreement, is you sign it and it never comes out. You never take it out of the drawer. But when you do need it, it is sort of clean, efficient way to ensure that it's less emotionally driven. Someone doesn't end up holding the bag, and you're able to more equitably make an exit from a long-term important relationship.
Well, you're exiting that important relationship.
You are, yeah. You're thinking about it as like two parties sort of literally entering into a contract. And sometimes we do partnership contracts. Sometimes we call them cohabitation, family formation contracts. So the idea is you're sitting down and you're really hammering out these details. And it could be everything from, yes, we've both invested in a house, to if one of us wants to end the relationship, how long does the other have to move out, or who gets the pets? So it's really crosses a span more so than just what is covered under law for in the case of a divorce.
Or a conscious uncoupling, according to Gwen.
Or a conscious uncoupling.
Second question. What's the biggest money mistake couples make when they move in together?
That the person you move in with is not the person you break up with. It's not having the uncomfortable conversations. And I think the decision to move in together is a big one, and there is a lot of dreams behind it. A lot of times I think the conversation around logistics is really uncomfortable. In some ways, prenups like cohabitation, like 90% are never signed, because it's that really sort of, this is what I'm coming in, this is what you're coming in, and there's a transparency. If you are joining together in an apartment and a life together, can you say to the other person, these are my expectations for like what happens if family comes in? The biggest money mistake is being casual, not making a plan. The plan could be, we have separate bank accounts and we have one account that pays for house expenses. I think titling is another huge mistake. Let's say somebody owned the house, the other person moves in and starts paying the mortgage. Well, if they break up, well, you had the down payment, but I paid part of the mortgage. Instead of saying like, is it joint ownership? These things end two ways: death or a breakup. And in the event of a death, it's incredibly sad, but let's take that same situation where you have house titled in one name and they are never married and the owner passes away. The partner that is still living there is going to be evicted by the family. You hope that's not the case, but they have absolutely no legal rights. So it's sort of understanding that you hope you're going to make it forever, but without something in place, there's no recognition of a unmarried partner, cohabitating partner.
Should couples always split the rent 50-50? Or is there a fairer way when incomes are different between them?
We usually talk about pro rata. Salaries ebb and flow through life. And just because you start off with one person who's, let's say, is an investment banker, but then decides to go back to school, then you have someone else carrying that. And then maybe they add a child to the mix. There isn't necessarily always like a linear wealth building. And what does that mean? If two people invest in a house and they put in equal money, it's a pretty easy math on how you get out of it. Okay, we sell it, we split it 50-50. What happens if part of wealth building is one of the partners decides to stay home, perhaps take care of kids, or their career takes a backseat and they help out with the building of another business, throwing parties or writing thank you cards or being part of like marketing and sort of that unpaid labor that goes into a partnership. Unlike in a marriage, when there's a divorce, that sort of contribution is recognized, but not in a cohabitation.
Actually, it's funny you bring that up. What you just said reminds me of a divorce I read about, but it was a very senior executive at General Electric. And his wife followed him around the world. He was promoted to leading all of their businesses all around the world. And she gave up her career, followed him, supported him, hosted all other executives and whatever it takes to build a career and network. And then he filed for divorce. And she claimed all those years of unpaid labor. And the courts, they sided with her. And she got compensated for years. And there was a prenup. She filed as unpaid labor.
I think it's really fascinating. And I think there's a lot of reality about that. May it be, and this isn't necessarily a male-female thing, the contributions of a partner, maybe editing your writing or managing the other's calendar or marketing and stuff, but like very rarely is the building of a company and building of a brand and building of a career a solo enterprise. When I talk to couples, let's say they're married and I say, you need life insurance for husband and wife, and wife may stay home and take care of the kids, and the husband will go, oh, but she doesn't work. And I go, yes, but she works in the home. And all of those things that allow you to be an executive or be a partner in a law firm, like cooking, taking care of the kids, whatever, like you have to hire someone to do those things. Then it's like, oh, wow, a driver, a cook, cleaning, all of those things. Then the value around that work is sort of recognized. It's the building the family business.
It's labor, right? And
oh yeah, absolutely.
Free lunch, and everyone should get paid for their labor. Simple.
Right.
I believe it. However, I'm getting this argument right from my wife right now, who has given up a very successful career, even though she's on the board of arts institutions. She gave up a very active career to the home parent for our two boys. So I hear it a lot already, and we're going to be talking about it for our cohabitation.
Right. I think it's a really important conversation to have early on in, may it be cohabitation, may it be partnership. Someone can unexpectedly end up in a place where having one parent stay home with a child, their career maybe isn't going to earn as much or be less expensive, while another is going gangbusters. And so it's like, is this what we believe in and what would happen? Because re-entering the workforce after a decade out or something is difficult. Those are difficult conversations to have.
That's exactly what my wife said to me. So I want to clarify one thing before we move on to the next question is, when splitting expenses specifically, what is your go-to recommendation given either equal or unequal incomes?
I think the pro rata is great, an understanding of separate accounts, joint account, a house account, pro rata contribution, but also what are sort of external resources and other commitments. One of the benefits of remaining unmarried is you're not responsible for the other person's debt. So if they have student loans, the other doesn't, you're in very different situations. And that's a conversation worth having. You get married and the other person is on the hook for that. You're not looking over each other's shoulder, but there is an equal contribution to a joint account for house expenses.
So there's an expense account. There's contributions. You decide what the pro rata, difference or ratio is. It could be 50-50. It could not. That's a great idea. And there's no like, you did this, I did that. Actually, what I think I'm going to use.
You absolutely should. And then from the perspective of like what you contribute into it, if there is a future dissolution and like that's the account that pays the mortgage, you go, well, I paid 70%, you paid 30%, and it's sort of easier to track. Those are sort of the hard asset aspects of it.
That is very actionable advice right there. Get an expense account and contribute pro rata as per agreement. How do you bring up a cohabitation agreement without making it super awkward? That that's sort of why I've been procrastinating. We have so many conversations about so many things, parenting, and 3 and a 4-year-old. Oh, do we need another tough conversation?
I find them to be actually more collaborative. There are provisions in place that have to do with kids. Child support is X. But I think there's also, you reduce animosity. What I found in negotiations, someone will say 90 days to move out. And even listing, like, when you move into a place together, you're going to have something like, this skateboard belonged to my brother. It was painted by a tattoo artist. It means a lot to me. Of like huge value? No, but like in a breakup situation, I would want to take it with me. And so if people can sort of get that list or like an understanding of like, yeah, we may go in together on the couch, but my mother's painting or whatever, then there's not like gatekeeping around that, or an understanding of like, listen, I really want to update your bathroom because I want a soaking tub. Okay, I can't afford to do that. So if you put the money into the soaking tub upon a later sale, I will reimburse you for it.
But is there really any like go-to tips about bringing up the awkward conversation of the agreement?
I think that it is actually, I'll tell you why. Here's a great tip. Good fences make for good neighbors. And I don't want you to be concerned about, it's the worst case scenario. It's not that we break up, it's that I die and you could be evicted from the house that I own in my sole name. Don't you want to have rights?
That's a good way to frame it.
Or
I like that. I'm going to use that.
Or
and given that I'm much older than I'm going to use that because you'll believe it, and I do believe, but I just don't want to come up with the awkward conversation. Or we need that puts our love in writing.
Right, and it is deeply uncomfortable. But I will say, from my own perspective of being involved with someone who's older and has kids that are older, like even in a dating scenario, having sort of a clear understanding and agreement of saying, I'm not going after anything, this isn't like trying to take something, made the kids so much more comfortable. Like there was a sense of like, oh, okay, like she's really in it for the right reasons. And so like I go beyond a cohabitation agreement because like we don't share property. We have like between New York, Vermont, Florida, whatever, that like if we're going to purchase property together, it'll be under a limited partnership agreement. But being able to say to a 16 and an 18-year-old, like, guys, your inheritance is off the table. That's what's not happening here. Immediately sort of grease the wheels to have a much more trusting relationship. And the same thing for all, like everyone else too, that like, I think not that you have to share the terms with family and friends, but for them to know, like, you know, I hate to wish your death upon you. I haven't met your wife. I assume she's amazing. But like, if you were to pass away, there's life insurance, you know, there's like, those are things you can put in of like, that the days and weeks that follow will be hugely tragic, but she's not going to end up not being able to afford the house and moving the kids out of a school district and stuff like that.
When the problems do happen, you don't need more problems piling on top of them. So let's preempt some of these problems with something like a cohabitation agreement, the discussion. Okay, really interesting. And again, something where you've already done it, something I'm about to be involved in with you, so very timely. Last thing for this discussion, if you're not married, does your partner even get anything if something happens to me or to anyone? Should unmarried couples be thinking about estate planning?
So they can take under like a contract area, but like I said, like you got to hire a lawyer, you got to do sort of like equitable enrichment. It's going to be really hard to, not hard, but like, you know, oh, I paid the mortgage on his house, so now I'm going to go back and try to like collect it, and you're going to be in court. Like that is an amazingly expensive mishigas, and it's so much more expensive than sitting down and having that uncomfortable conversation. But no, the answer is no. Like there's not common law marriage out there. So if you're an unmarried couple and you break up, there's no recognition for you.
You're an unmarried couple for a long time, and you have a wonderful relationship and everything's fantastic, and tragedy strikes and one passes away. What happens then? That's what I mean. That's what my question.
Nothing. And so I'm going to split the difference here and say there's the option of becoming registered domestic partners, which I did with my former spouse. in New York became registered domestic partners so that I could get access to health insurance. And if something happened catastrophic, I could be in the hospital. So that's like, you're not married, you don't have inheritance rights, but you're registered domestic partners. However, that still doesn't mean that I inherit his pension, or that if he's in a car accident, no,
Wow.
inheritance, like registered domestic partners, is more about state recognition for, it was a health insurance play, really not play, but like you go to the courthouse, you become registered domestic partners so I can get on health insurance. But again, it's like those documents, if I want to go to the hospital and visit him and we're not married, you have to do healthcare directives to each other. And if I'm living in a house owned in his sole name, his kids have every right to come and tell me to get out.
Wow.
And so some people can get palimony, like the divorce you were talking about. There's sort of a very famous cohabitation breakup situation. I think it's called Marvin, where the woman, they were in a long-term relationship and she was able to claim she deserved palimony instead of alimony.
Wait, is that Lee Marvin's wife?
I believe it might be.
I think it's Lee Marvin, that story. Yes, I remember.
Yeah. So
Lee Marvin, the great actor from The Big Red One. All the Westerns and the Army movies. I love Lee Marvin.
But there's certainly people that are left out in the cold after, as you're saying, in that divorce, but instead of having the marriage, like the constraints around marriage, the laws, the understanding, it's even more tenuous.
And I think what you brought up is some of the things that could happen. I don't think any of us, and me included, being a CIO, investment and wealth management expert of like decades, I didn't know so many of these topics that we're discussing in the newsletter and now with you. And what I really didn't know is what bad things could happen. If you really understand what could happen, then you're going to take steps. If you're a sane and rational being, you're going to take steps to prevent them. But no one really knows what the problems could be. So by highlighting those in this discussion, then you say, okay, this is what can happen to you, but we have a solution. And cohabitation agreement.
And there's also like the bad cases. I got a call this week of someone where dad passed away, girlfriend's living in the house.
Oh.
And how do you get rid of girlfriend who has access to the safe and stuff like that? So it's also.
So I'm guessing you're not representing the girlfriend.
Well, I don't do litigation in this area. It's very sad. But I think there's also not a lot around, but like what relationships are and what they look like in this world of like, I live in Maine, my partner lives all over the place. Like you can be in a long-term committed relationship and not necessarily cohabitate. Like I've done agreements for people where it's like one of them will take a sabbatical for 3 months, or one is part of their job requirements to be in France for half a year. That doesn't mean that the relationship is broken down. People can have separate houses and still be in a long-term committed relationship, but invest together in like a boat or a vacation home or something like that, or third property. And so when you get sort of further and further away from something highly recognizable, I think it becomes even more important to spell it out. And these are by no means the most expensive documents to craft. It's the lift, if anything, is saying like, what is our expectation for each other? Like a prenup, the consideration is marriage. And so what is the consideration for cohabitation? And I've had people say it's continuing to in this case, they happen to have like a organic farm, and it was like, continuing to build our farmstead and like a commitment of life together. Wow. You cannot put sex in there because then that's prostitution. That is like literally, they will get knocked out. That's your quote.
I think we have to do the outro based on, we have to end on that.
Well, it's always like the famous like Felix whatever quote that is like, if it flies, floats, and I've had, if it foals horses, rent, don't buy. So now I say if it flies or like identifies as a fiance or foals, rent, don't buy. But like, no matter what, you can win, you cannot win. The end of a relationship is terrifically sad, may it end by a breakup or a death. And the best advice is like, spend a little bit of money come to some terms, even if they're not perfect, and they will help carry you through a difficult time.
That is a perfect ending. Yeah.
Thank
Let's not make a terrible time worse with being unprepared. So I want to thank you, because that's a wrap on this episode of the Noyack Expert Series for today, talking about cohabitation agreements. A huge thank you to you, Meredith, and I'm going to see you in person in a bunch of weeks. I thank you for sharing.
I'm going to see you when I'm in New York.
Yeah. Okay. Even before. Okay, great. I'm going to see you sooner.
I told you that was like, I'm renting a car. You don't have to put this in, but I'm going to rent a car and I'm driving out to the Hamptons because you're signing, because nobody ever gets signings right. So I now require to do signings.
Okay.
I thought I could get you with a Christie's thing. I was like, don't you want to come to Christie's?
You know what? I didn't understand the message, but anyway, let me do the outro.
I'll invite your wife to go to Christie's.
Okay.
That's going to be the punishment if you don't sign your documents.
Well, thank you again for sharing your expertise on cohabitation agreements and, of course, being financially prepared. Hey, everybody, if you found this conversation valuable, subscribe, leave a review, share the episode. We both appreciate it with someone, and then the person you share it with will also benefit and appreciate you as well. Don't forget to check out Noyack Wealth Weekly. Here's my shameless plug, the #1 personal wealth management newsletter for millennials and Gen Z, and for more expert insights tailored to you, the next generation of investors. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and take control of your financial future.